Hello and welcome to today's web presentation. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services for Alpha Software. And today we're doing something special. I've got Prabhat Singh and Scott Ritchie from the company Pyze here today. And they're going to be talking about analytics for, or usage analytics for enterprise applications. So what this is basically it's a system that lets you know how people are actually using your software, what features they're using, what features they're not using, how often they're using it, so that you could see where people are getting hung up, what the usage statistics are, and it also can help determine what your return on investment is for your technology solutions, which helps you sell more into either your client or your company. At least I think that's how I've explained it, but Prabhat will set me straight, I am sure. So Prabhat, hello and welcome. I'd like to go ahead and make you the presenter, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for having us today, Dave.
You bet. So you should see a little dialog box, and it should say share your screen. And when you click that, there is your screen, and I'm looking at your PowerPoint. Great.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks again for inviting me to speak today, of my colleague Scott from Pyze here as well. So today we're going to do a quick overview of the Pyze platform and how we can enable organizations to build better applications and generate greater ROI from enterprise application projects. Pyze is headquartered in Redwood City, California. We're a venture-funded startup that specializes in cross-platform analytics and user engagement. And we're deployed on roughly 500,000 web and mobile applications worldwide. What we do as a business is really enable deep cross-platform user intelligence around user behavior, whether that behavior is across mobile, web, voice, chatbots. We're seeing increased fragmentation of service delivery. When it comes to access of any business services these days, and Alpha does a great job of making it really easy to build enterprise applications. What Pyze does is provide visibility into the behavior of users and allow engaging those users so that we can maximize user productivity and ROI of projects. So that's what we do at a very, very high level. To delve in a bit deeper, based on the visibility that we're providing around what users are doing within the application, what workflow they're executing or not executing, how much time they're spending on a particular business function or not spending, we're able to sort of get a good picture of how the application is actually being utilized versus how it's intended to be utilized. And for the organization at a top level, we can provide aggregated metrics across business lines, functional areas, provide opportunities for business services rationalization and impact analysis of the applications that are being built. For each specific application, we can drill in pretty deep to provide an understanding of each screen, provide the ability to kind of monitor specific business functions within an application, to understand what users are doing when they're doing that task, and if there's a workflow associated with the task, are users being able to navigate that workflow appropriately, or are they faltering somewhere? Or if you've got a 5-step workflow and most users drop off on step 4, well, can we optimize that process to improve that transition, or should it really just be a 4-step workflow? And we can do this both at a user level as well as provide this data at a top level to be able to identify trends and patterns across the different platforms. And what this translates into, of course, is better application experience, more intuitive navigation for users. We're able to kind of optimize the actual user interfaces, and that can lead to, of course, improved productivity, but also a reduction in onboarding time or training costs to get users active. We also provide for feedback loops into the product organization so that you can get real-time feedback from users based on actions that they may be doing, or if there's specific users that aren't executing specific tasks, we can send them out a survey via push notification or in-app messaging and so forth. So the idea is to sort of be able to understand, analyze, optimize, engage, right? That's really what we're doing from a business perspective. And we really work with two types of groups within an organization. So at the C level, we're able to provide a holistic understanding of usage across all these different business services so that the C level can understand the business impact and ROI of the applications that are being built. And this can be broken down by platform, this can be broken down by functional area, by business line. And with the number of apps that are being created these days, this visibility can be really, really useful to do things like sunset unproductive apps, combine features across applications, determine which new services are really more appropriate for mobile than web. Right. So these are sort of high-level decisions that can now be more data-driven. And then for the product and engineering organization, we provide detailed metrics around usage, retention, workflow execution, right, abandonment or failure rates. If the application is relying on third-party systems, we can actually provide that visibility as well to sort of see how much interaction we're actually having with those third-party systems in terms of executing a business process or a business flow. So that's sort of Pyze at a high level, and then of course being able to identify usage anomalies, where users are dropping off, being able to kind of identify trends and patterns is really important, and we can do this, at a user level, we can do it at a departmental level, or we can do it across the entire user base for the analysis. To give you a quick overview of the platform, we provide custom dashboards that can be role-based and can provide visibility into metrics that are appropriate for each role in the organization, and each stakeholder can kind of look at the metrics that are important for their job, right? Whether it's kind of aggregate usage statistics, a specific business process that we want to kind of drill into and understand behavior on, whether it's data across a particular business line, or we want to aggregate metrics across different platforms for a particular application, right, across web or iOS or Android or tablet, right? So we're able to sort of combine different types of metrics to provide these capabilities so that you can kind of create custom dashboards. We also provide multidimensional data analysis. So you can look at a specific business action. So here we're looking at a loan origination application. I want to understand, okay, which of one of my branches are originating the most loans, or which state is producing the most loans. So we can kind of understand what's being done better in that area and then replicate that best practice to other branches or other places. And this can be done across location, it can be done across time series, across cohort, across device types, across specific attributes that we might be collecting around a business process, right? But for a loan application, it might be the type of applicant, type of loan, amount of loan. There may be 50 other attributes that we may care about in terms of analysis, and all of those can be attached to the platform at the time of that action occurring by the user, and then we can analyze that data, we can visualize that data, and then we can put it on a dashboard. We also provide cross-application funnel analysis. So we have the ability to look at a particular business process and the steps in that business process's workflow, and be able to then look at how much time are users spending on each step. What is the drop-off between steps? We can kind of go through and kind of create these custom workflows to be able to then look at, okay, are there opportunities to optimize this workflow? And for users that are completing the workflow or not completing the workflow, we can engage those users. We can actually reach back out to those users to solicit feedback, to give them tool tips, training material based on whether they completed the workflow or not. We also provide screen and event flow analysis, and this comes out of the box. So you're able to see what is a user's journey in a typical session in this application. What are the paths that they're following? What are the features that they're accessing or not accessing? If we've instrumented custom business events in the application, we can see what events are being fired, and understanding kind of the most popular paths gives us the ability to sort of know how the application is actually being used by the entire population or not being used, right? If there's features that we want users to utilize and we see that users aren't utilizing those features and are not spending time on those screens, well, then we need to revisit the design or optimize that design. We have built-in cross-platform notifications, as I mentioned earlier, so we can utilize push messaging, in-app messaging. These can be both trigger-based, or they can be sent as scheduled campaigns to specific segments of users. So if we see someone doing something in the application that they shouldn't be doing, right, this can actually just be coded into the application that, okay, when this event triggers, Pyze can automatically send an in-app message or a push notification with some material to help that user. Or we can take users that are struggling, identify a segment of users, and be able to notify those users. We have cohort analysis that's built into the product as well, so you can get a good understanding of what is the stickiness of each application. We can do this by platform. We can do it for the application as a whole. And we have the ability to also segment users based on the actions that they're doing. So you can kind of understand how many users are really engaged or power users of this application, how many users aren't as engaged, how many users are using the application to do a specific action, like originating a loan application or performing a credit check in that example that I mentioned. But it could be really anything for any vertical. We also have this idea of user profiles within Pyze that provide the ability to bring in employee database information, CRM information, even information about external users to the business that we might know, whether they're a particular business unit, whether they're on a particular subscription plan, demographic information about that user, and then we can take the profile data that we have along with the user behavior data and then do segmentation of users. And then that data can be used to do further analysis, or it can be utilized to essentially run a campaign or notification campaign to users as needed. And all of this can be done across platforms. So one of the things that I had mentioned earlier was we have this idea of app groups that give us the ability to really do cross-app analysis. So whether it's analysis across platforms, right, as we can see on the right-hand side of the screen, left-hand side of the screen here, or it's analysis across applications, right? So if a business division has 10 applications that have been built, we can actually do analysis across all 10 of those to both sort of understand user behavior and aggregate level, or if a particular user uses all of those applications, we can understand that user's journey across those different applications as well. So that's sort of the high level overview of Pyze. What I'd like to do is maybe show a quick demo of the product to kind of give a flavor of how it works and how it can be utilized. When we'll do an abbreviated version of that given time, and then we can open up to questions.
Cool. Sounds good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So this is sort of the Pyze platform. As I mentioned, you can kind of set up different dashboards or different metrics that are relevant for the business. This is my loan origination application, and things that I care about for this application are, okay, how many new users have started using this application? How many users am I getting? I'm interested in kind of understanding form factor. So this is a mobile-only loan origination application. So I can see that, okay, I've got more users generally that are using this on phones versus tablets. We can actually dig into total sessions on a daily basis and what type of devices are being used to access those.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? I was wondering if you could put a little bit more context behind the application itself. Is this an application that's used for filling in loan applications? Is that the point? So like from a bank or a credit union or something like that? Is that
That's right. So this is
Okay.
sort of a loan origination application that someone within a bank would use to fill out a loan application and process that application along the way.
Right. And that comes in different flavors. There's a mobile version and a web version, and you're tracking both. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, so we can essentially, the mobile version, the web version, we can separate those out to look at data for each of those individually, or we can combine those in an app group to look at aggregate user behavior data across, the iOS, the Android, the web version.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks. That's a good question. Thank you. And there's different aspects to this application, right? So there's underwriting. I'm interested in kind of understanding which state is doing is getting through more underwriting applications, because the origination part is important, but underwriting is the last step and perhaps the most important step of the process. I may be interested in, okay, how many users are doing credit checks. We can see how many total applications have been originated over the last time period. So these are the metrics that I care about, and I can kind of create a custom dashboard based on those. There might be others and different metrics that are important for your business, right? I can go through, I'll switch to the loans application. We can look at specific metrics. So new users, how many active users there were of this application, how many sessions were executed, how much time was spent within this application. And by and large, we capture all of this data out of the box. We can also go in and add specific events that we want to monitor, which are the business functions within that application, right? And these will be specific to each application. Things like the actual loan application. And I can do this analysis by time series. I can do it by platform, right, to kind of understand web versus mobile. Time series, whether I want to look at this by week, for instance, and I may want to look at this by day of the week. I could add cohort analysis when users first started using that application, location of that user, specific technology type in terms of what type of device they're using to access the application, or specific attributes, right, that are related to that business function. We could add filters. I could say, okay, I'm only interested in a particular state or a particular country. Let's say I'm interested in just the US. And then we can go through and say, okay, I want to look at this data for the last 30 days. We get the data back. I can visualize that data and actually see, okay, what day of the week are users most productive in terms of originating loan applications, right? I can add this to a dashboard. I can save the raw data as a CSV for further analysis, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So this really enables kind of ad hoc exploration of the entire user base for specific business functions. The conversion funnels that I mentioned earlier, so these provide the ability to kind of create on-demand workflow analysis and funnels. So I can go through and say, I'm interested in looking at how many users installed this application, then did a loan application, did a credit check. Let's just go there and then look at, okay, I've got pretty decent conversion here in terms of, of the 153 users that actually use this application, 152 of them originated, and then I've got some drop off here. Let's add, underwriting to this and see what that looks like. And then I'll run that exact same analysis. And then we can see there's a big drop off here between credit check and underwriting. So we can dig into that to understand, what's happening here in terms of users moving from step 3 to step 4. And this, for this particular application, this seems like a reasonable drop off, but this could have been very different in terms of the actual numbers, and it may not have been as straightforward. So this gives us the ability to really understand what's happening, and then we can create a segment of users for people that are going through this workflow, or let's say people who are going through the first 3 steps and not completing the last step, right? So we can create a segment of those users and then send them a notification to sort of understand what they're actually doing, right? You can kind of go through and look at cohort analysis. We can go through and kind of build segments of users. And as I said, the segments are based on both the behavioral data as well as the user profile data in terms of what we know about this user. It could be, who they are, what what division they're in, what department they're in, what their job title is, et cetera, et cetera. And then we can go through and create a segment of users, let's say, who are low usage users. And we can look at our loans application, and I can kind of say, okay, people who last used the app, in the last 3 months, we can say they did less than 5 loan applications, right, in the last, let's say, 30 days. So I'm going to categorize these users as low, and maybe I'll add another segment here so they were active in the last 30 days as well. So they're using the app, they're just not using that function. So we can be pretty dynamic in terms of the different functions we can enable here. And then I can go and create that segment of users and do analysis for just that segment of users, or I can go through and run a campaign against those users and send them a notification or tooltip, or I can go through and create a campaign that says, let's send them a push, let's send them an in-app message to get them to actually execute that loan application. So you can, I won't go through the whole campaign creation piece here, but the idea of being able to engage users to get them to do specific tasks or automate these types of notifications for onboarding purposes, for re-engagement purposes, can all be built into the product rollout, so that you're basically getting both your product and sort of these notifications and gentle reminders to help push users towards the right objective. But So the idea here is, right, be able to, as I stated earlier, analyze user behavior. You can visualize it. You can kind of work to optimize flows based on that analysis, and also engage users as necessary. So I'll stop there. Wanted to kind of give a quick overview. Happy to kind of dig in deeper, but I'd love to open it up to questions.
Great. Wow, that's fantastic. So not only does it collect usage metrics and give you insights as to what you may change, it can actually engage with the user by pushing out notifications and say, hey, you did step 3, step 4 isn't as hard as you think. Maybe you have to do X or something like that. Like you could start tailoring it based on where they are in the process.
Absolutely, yeah. We can, and these can be both kind of scheduled notifications that are based on kind of the analysis that we do, like, okay, which users didn't do step 4 of this process, or it could be, a trigger-based campaign that can be run that, okay, users did step 3, and if they don't do step 4 in the next 24 hours, automatically send this campaign message to them.
And then it shows up just as a notification on their phone, provided they've allowed notifications from that application. So that's sort of how it works. Gotcha, cool. All right, so we have a rather technical audience here, and I'm sure one of the things they're saying is, all right, that's cool, but how does that metering work? Like, how do I actually get Pyze into my own software, my own mobile apps, my own web apps? What's involved in doing that?
Yeah, so we have SDKs that are built to be very, very easy to deploy, both for web and mobile. Right, so for Android, for instance, it's a pretty basic. You get an app key from Pyze. You can kind of use Gradle or Maven to kind of pull the SDK jar file. And then, essentially it's sort of one line of code to initialize Pyze. And then we've got, specific events that you can create and business events that you want to monitor, and just add those tags and send them to Pyze. So it's pretty straightforward. And, and then we've talked about sort of doing a deeper integration, as we move forward with this partnership. So we'll make it even easier, right? To integrate with Alpha as we move forward.
Okay, wonderful. And okay, so that's Android and iOS. And for just straight up web stuff, is it just JavaScript code that makes calls back to your server, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's just sort of JavaScript code that is a basic snippet that you cut and paste. And we're pretty much off to the races.
Very cool. And presumably that would, as you know, our applications that we build with Alpha Anywhere use Cordova, also known as PhoneGap. We use that with PhoneGap Build to put together what are HTML5 hybrid applications. So it seems to me that your HTML code here would probably work with that as well, as opposed to having to mess around.
Yeah, I mean, so what we would do is essentially use the web agent, basically, because this will give you pretty much all the capabilities that you need.
Great.
And we would utilize the web agent to be able to sort of code in to the app in the dev environment, so that all 3 of those applications would be enabled, right? So iOS app, Android app, and the web app would be enabled with Pyze instrumentation, and it makes it really easy, because now you don't even have to do 3 different types of integrations for iOS, Android. We can just use the web agent. And
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, great. Very cool. I'm not seeing a lot of questions here, guys. So if you have questions, go ahead, type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. This is all new stuff, so I don't expect a lot of questions, but someone probably has something for you. No, nothing else. We'll give you guys a minute or two. Is there anything else, though, that you'd like to cover, that you'd like to show us today?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of the, since we're sort of discussing kind of the instrumentation and the integration piece of this, I think it may be helpful to kind of just delve in just a little bit deeper into that.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, and generally, with Alpha Anywhere, Dave, are you seeing are most of the applications sort of internal facing, or are there some that are external facing as well that are being built? What is kind of the general overview?
We have a mixture actually, and so a lot of them are internal facing applications, but we have quite a few people who've built software as a service type of applications who are using Alpha Anywhere as well. I think that this group, for example, has seen one for our dog walking service, which is now the biggest dog walking application out there, and that was built in Alpha Anywhere and a public facing application.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so as part of our SDKs, especially for public-facing applications, we take user privacy very seriously. So we have built-in sort of GDPR compliance into Pyze.
Okay, great.
What that means is you can integrate APIs to sort of have users kind of opt out of data collection, resume data collection, request for their data to be deleted. So these are all kind of constructs that are required by data processors as part of GDPR. So we take that very, very seriously, and have made it really easy to be able to kind of implement those capabilities within your application.
Nice. Can you tell us about some of your clients? Like what industries are they in? I know it's sort of across the board, but do you have a couple of examples that sort of stand out as, someone who's really getting a lot of value out of Pyze?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we work in a number of industries, from healthcare to finance to maintenance, oil and gas, right? So, like it's a pretty horizontal platform.
Sure.
We have one customer in the oil and gas space that operates oil rigs across the world, and they're interested in understanding user behavior, across desktop, across web, and iPads that are deployed on those rigs. Right, a lot of their services are actually the maintenance work that's done on the rigs is done offline. So being able to sort of understand the efficacy of doing that task on an iPad versus being able to do it on a connected desktop is really, really important to them. And we can give them that type of insight, not just, hey, how much time was spent doing a particular task, or was this flow appropriately designed, right, for the web application versus the mobile application, but how much of this job was done offline versus online, and what was the performance like. So being able to kind of do that type of analysis is really, really important for them, because they can then kind of directly demonstrate ROI of being able to mobilize that business service, rather than having someone go and onto a rig, do some tasks, and write it down on paper, and come back and input that on a connected device. Just being able to do an iPad using that application, and whenever there's connectivity, right, there being a synchronization of the back end and uploading that data is what they're doing, and we're kind of helping them prove out the ROI case to go and now mobilize a lot more business services.
Right. You brought up something there that I hadn't thought of, but it's actually really quite important, and that is the notion of offline. You're still able to collect these types of metrics even if there is no cell phone service, is what it sounds like to me. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So when it resets, it said, okay, this is how the user used it while they were offline, and you get to know that later on.
That's right. That's right.
Great.
Yeah, and that's one of the huge value adds of sort of being able to deploy this on mobile devices. As you know, we can really enable users to access these services anywhere, and then kind of have on-demand connectivity. And we've modeled our agents that collect this data very similarly, and it's all sort of designed to be asynchronous in terms of data collection. So there's no overhead. There's no additional latency that's introduced. We're just collecting that information, then calling home when the device gets online.
When there's a signal, yeah. Okay, so I have a question from one of our partners out here who asks, what type of support does Pyze provide to make sure end user are utilizing Pyze to its full potential? So I guess like what's the onboarding and check-in process like when
Yeah,
if someone goes and works with you?
that's a great question. So we've got a dedicated customer success team that will work with you
Great.
to essentially ensure that you're successful and there's sufficient training and knowledge transfer that occurs, uh, for you to be able to utilize Pyze to its kind of maximum potential.
Great.
From a onboarding perspective, the one thing that we like to focus on is ensuring that the instrumentation architecture, and we could do like probably a whole separate session on kind of the right things and the wrong things to to monitor
To
in
look
an
at, yeah.
application.
Okay, sure.
Right. So like, what are the business metrics that are important to capture above and beyond what we provide out of the box? Because that really provides a very firm foundation for us to kind of leverage the capabilities that Pyze offers. So our team will sort of work with you on sort of the first one or two or three applications to be able to kind of go through and say, okay, okay, this is the business uh, objective of this application. These are the users. What are the things that make sense to monitor, right? So for a dog walking application, we'd want to kind of look at, both sides of supply and demand, right? To kind of understand that, okay, the functions that each of those users do, whether it's sort of signing up to be a walker or someone who's,
Logging in to check on their dog or something like
yeah,
that.
right. I mean, so
Yep.
those things are kind of architected the right way within the application. We've instrumented the right business events that are going to move the needle, and then we've got the right attributes for those events, right? Whether we want to do the analysis by type of dog or by location or market, right? There's all kinds of different things that we might care about attaching to that
Yeah.
business event, so that we can do that analysis, and really kind of understand how each action or each workflow in that application affects the business. Once we have that done, everything else becomes really easy because we've got the data. We can then kind of go through and kind of define the use cases around whether, okay, these are the dashboards that we need for different stakeholders. These are the funnel analysis that we want to perform. These are the segments. These are the engagement campaigns that make sense to kind of build in to the application. So we work very closely to sort of ensure that your team is kind of up to speed as you're getting onboarded, and then we'll do weekly check-ins after that process, and then we have dedicated monthly check-ins after the first 2 or 3 months, depending on kind of level of comfort that the team has.
Great. Excellent. Good answer. Thank you. Someone here is asking, what's the basic cost structure of Pyze? Yes.
Yeah, so Pyze is licensed based on active users of the application. So we have two basic models. One is for kind of internal applications, and one is for external applications.
Okay.
And we're actually working pretty closely with the Alpha team to kind of create a pricing sheet, which we'd be happy to share with folks. But the pricing is based on kind of monthly active users, broadly speaking, and it's subscription SaaS pricing.
Okay. Yep. And is it a couple dollars per user, $10 per user? I know it depends on volume and whether it's internal or external, but sort of in that ballpark?
Yeah, generally it's less than $1 per user, right, depending
Okay.
on the application.
Sure.
Right,
Yeah. But you can get an awful lot of insights out of it. And presumably, if someone wanted to be cheap about it, they could use it for a while, get the app to where they want, and then say, I don't need this subscription for now until I want to go back and make changes to the app or something like that. If they want to use
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly possible.
yeah.
Though, yeah, this is kind of like a
But it
continuous
seems like,
improvement model. But
yeah,
that's
continuous improvement. And also it seems like it can sort of monitor the health of the application and say, wait a minute, I've not made any changes, but I've noticed there's been a big decrease in this or in that. So I can
right,
see that
right.
being useful.
Yeah, and you know, customers find like those types of anomalies all the time, and then they'll go and dig into it. Oh, you know, there's a new OS update that went out, and this particular feature stopped working, so we need to update it, right? So those types of things can be really useful to sort of understand. And you know, and of course, I think you know, Dave, we're going to share information, and happy to kind of
Mhm.
dig in deeper on pricing with anyone who's interested after the call.
Sure, absolutely. And as everyone on the call knows, you can always reach us here at Alpha at Guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. But if you want to get directly in touch with Pyze, what email should they use for that? If you want to put up your homepage or something like that so that they
Yeah,
know how
contact
to
at
get in
Pyze.
touch with you.
Yeah, contact at Pyze.com is great, or you can
Demo?
just go
Okay.
to Pyze.com
Pyze.
and say, hey, request demo, and you know, someone from our sales team will get back to you right away.
So someone brought up something here interesting in the questions section. It used to be that working from home was something that a lot of employers did not encourage. They kind of thought you're at home, maybe you're really not doing your job. But they sort of speculated, and maybe you've had people who've had this case where they say, look, now that these systems are monitored, I can see that the people are working, so it doesn't matter if they're in the office or not. Do people use Pyze maybe sometimes for checking to make sure that the workers are at their desk doing what they should be doing? Or
Yeah, I mean, you
yeah,
can.
you could do it that way if you wanted to. I know it sounds creepy, big brothery to, but yeah.
Well, that's certainly a creative use case, but you know, in general, being able to kind of get that understanding at an aggregate level is really
Right.
important, right?
Yeah,
And
that's what you guys do. Yep.
yeah, we certainly provide that. I mean, of course, you can drill into a user level. Like
Yeah.
I could log in here and say, okay, filter by Jimmy, right?
Like, Dave hasn't been, let's see. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Yeah,
and let's
yeah, this is Scott here. So I just want to
Thanks, Scott.
chime in on a particular use case. It's not for tracking somebody to see if they're working at home, but
Yeah.
it's to see if that person is productive in the usage of the app. So if we go back to the oil case, the oil rigs are the home of certain maintenance employees, work order processing, and they are able to track it down to a user ID that's associated with somebody within the company. And as they're progressing through the applications in terms of missing certain fields in a work order or a maintenance scheduling out in the oil rigs, they are able to track the user productivity within the application, and then sort of have this idea of, okay, what do we need to train you on, or what do we need to change in the app in order for you to be more productive?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Great.
absolutely. Yeah, so you can definitely drill down to the individual user, and it certainly makes sense to do that in some cases.
Fantastic. I don't see any other questions coming in. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
No, thank you so much for having us, and you know, giving us the opportunity to present.
Hey,
Pyze.
great. Thank you very much for showing up and showing off this technology. I find it really interesting, and I hope people did as well. They can always contact you directly at Pyze, or if you've got questions, you can send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Prabhat and Scott, thank you very much for presenting. Take care, and for the rest of you, I hope to see you at the next Wednesday webinar, where Deanne McCormick will be back answering your technical questions. Until then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.